welcome to lesson 6.6 on solving inequalities by multiplying or dividing. So when you multiply or divide each side of an inequality by a positive number, the relationship between the sides does not change. This is the same thing with equations and the same thing with adding and subtracting, right? So 15n is greater than or equal to 45,000. To solve this, I'm just going to divide by 15 and divide by 15. And I'm going to get n is greater than or equal to 450, 1, 2, 3 zeros, divided by 15 to 30,000. Okay? And then I can graph that by drawing my little fancy line, doing 30,000 right here, we'll count by 10,000s, 20,000. Okay, I'm going to do a circle, I'm going to shade it in, and since my variable is on this side, I can use my little arrow trick and go like that. Okay, also some people shade arrows, they shade the whole thing. Like that. Okay, so when you multiply or divide each side by a negative number, reverse the direction of the inequality. So this is what's different, okay? Adding and subtracting, the variable, you're not going to do anything with the sign. It stays the same. Multiplying positive numbers stays the same. Dividing by positive numbers, it stays the same. So most of the time, your inequality sign is going to stay the same, except for when you multiply or divide by a negative number. Okay? In that case, you reverse the direction of the inequality. So, let me show you why first, before we do that. Okay, so if I have, let's say that I'm going to pick a fact that's just like obvious, okay? 2 is less than 3. Right? Now, if I multiply each of these by a positive number, if I multiply 2 times 2 and 3 times 2, I'm going to get 4 is less than 6. Still true. But what happens if instead I multiply them by a negative 2? And over here, by a negative 2. Well, now I get negative 2 times 2 is negative 4, and 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. So which of these numbers is smaller? The negative 6 is, right? So if I'm multiplying both sides by a negative number, it's going to change which one's smaller. That's why the sign has to flip. Okay, what about if I divide them? 4 divided by 2 is 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. Which one's smaller? Still the 2. So dividing by a positive number doesn't make a difference. What about if I made those numbers negative? 4 divided by negative 2 is going to be negative 2. 6 divided by negative 2 is going to be negative 3. Now which number is smaller? The negative 3. What about if this number is negative? If that number's negative and this number's negative, okay, then that one would be smaller. When I divide them both by a negative number, then I would get positive 2, right? If I divided these both by a negative number, I would get positive 2 and I would get positive 3. So now the 3 is bigger. It switched the sign. If one of them is negative and the other is not, the same thing would happen. Okay, this is going to become positive, that's going to become negative, so this one will be negative. But if this is negative and I divide by a positive number, negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2, and 6 divided by 2 is 3. Which one is smaller? Still the negative 2. So that's why this is what's important. What you're dividing or multiplying it by. Not the original number. It doesn't matter if that's negative or not. It only matters what you are multiplying or dividing by. Okay, let's go back to our example problems. So, here we have x divided by -2 is less than 1. To get rid of this division, I need to multiply by a -2. I need a bell to ring. Ding! Whenever I am multiplying both sides by a negative, I'm going to flip my sign. So watch what happens. X, it's no longer less than, now it's greater than -2. Graph it. -2, -1, -3, circle, not going to fill it in, and it goes in that direction. Okay? Or you can go like this, whatever you rather. All right, let's look at this example. So here it's being multiplied by a, so I'm going to divide it by a -3. Ding! I'm dividing by a negative number with an inequality, so what do I need to do? Switch my sign. Went from less than to greater than or equal. 12 divided by -3 is -4. Graph it. -4, -3, -5. Fill it in, circle it, and it's going to go in this direction. Okay? Yeah? You get it? All right. You might make mistakes with this. That's okay. All students do while they learn it. But remember, adding and subtracting with inequalities, sign doesn't change. Multiplying and dividing by a positive number, sign doesn't change. Multiplying and dividing by a negative number, the sign changes. All right. Go ahead and get to work.